Hello everybody, welcome to the United Stand. Very excited about this. I found Manchester United's left back. We're going to get into that. Last week we did the midfielder. Lots of comments, lots of interactions. We want that again because when we're talking about left back for Manchester United and potentially right back, we might do a right back video in a couple of weeks, but left back absolutely has to be a priority for Manchester United next season. Even if you think Dorgu's the solution, and there's a bit of twist at the end. There's a bit of a twist at the end of this video. There's possibly two. Dorgu actually measures up quite well on crosses, defensive actions, energy, progressive runs. He does. Is he going to be a left-sided player in the advance, right-sided player in the advance, or is he going to be a left-back? And even if he's going to be a left-back, is he ready to be one of the best left-backs in Europe at the moment? And you also need somebody to challenge him, understudy. It can't be Luke Shaw. When we look at Luke Shaw, and we've got 5 options here with a couple of twists, Luke Shaw this season, even taking into account that he's played left-sided centre-back, even if you take his last 5 games, he's averaging less than 1.3 crosses per 90, right? You take Dimarco at Inter, he's averaging 6 crosses per 90. You take Lewis Hall at Newcastle, he's averaging 3 crosses per 90. So Luke Shaw, as an attacking fullback, is poor. 1.28 crosses per 90 from Luke Shaw. It's just not good enough. And we know age profile, he's getting on a bit now. Yes, he's fit at the moment, but after the World Cup, will it go back to normal? He just doesn't offer anything going forward anymore. If he ever did. I always felt he did have a good cross on him, but he just doesn't. He's been very poor in that situation. And when you've got strikers like Sesko in the team, or even if you're just Manchester United, one of the fundamentals of a left-back for Manchester United is going to be the ability to get forward and put crosses into the box. We love it. It's in our DNA. So Luke Shaw just doesn't provide that. In a general sense, he just doesn't provide it, statistically and generally. And he's 30 years of age now as well. So Man United need a left-back. Now, going back to relevant on position, let's start off with our first option that we have for Manchester United. So let's go with something I think could be transformative. There's a couple of Premier League proven British players, and I think homegrown's not a bad idea. You always need to look at those quotas. And then there's a couple of players that maybe you could look at outside the Premier League. So when you look at Maatsen, straight away, I'm looking at crosses per 90. So where does Maatsen rank out of the players that I've got? And I've thrown a few in. So you've got Anthony Robinson, Maatsen, Dorgu, Hall, Luke Shaw, Truffert at Bournemouth, Nathaniel Brown at Frankfurt we've been linked at, and Dimarco. So quite a range of players. Maatsen is averaging about 3 crosses per 90, which, as we know, that's 3 times, more than 3 times, well, about 3 times what Luke Shaw's doing. He is at about 3 there. Obviously, he's young. I think he's under 23. Accurate crosses. On accurate crosses, most people are around 30%. I mean, Anthony Robinson's knocking up at 40%, and Truffert's around 35%, but around 30% for Maatsen and everybody else. I'd leave it at that. But 3 crosses per 90. If you took Maatsen and replaced him with Luke Shaw against Everton, you're going to get 3 times the output attacking-wise. I mean, sign him up. Doing this video, we're going to talk about their defensive output, their progressive runs, very important. But what fundamentally we're looking at is a left-back who can get forward and put crosses into the box to Sesko. Football's really simple, really simple. I think Maatsen's probably going to be quite expensive, but 3 crosses per 90, I like that. What's he like on the ball? I think possession's very important for a left-back as well. So we're looking at the same thing as a midfielder. How often are they on the ball? So passes per 90. Maatsen is, let me just get this. There's a few players on this. I've got a lot on this. It's difficult. So Maatsen's looking at, 40 passes per 90, which is ahead of Dorgu's 35. Lewis Hall is 45. Truffert's 40 as well. And Robinson is 50. So passes per 90. Robinson is higher than Maatsen. Lewis Hall is higher than Maatsen. But he's still relatively decent on the ball. Defensive output. Successful defensive actions per 90, 10. He's actually the best, apart from Truffert at Bournemouth. So he's second best out of everyone we're looking at, Maatsen. So I like the look of Maatsen. I think as an all-rounder, more crosses into the box, 3. Successful defensive actions, he's second place only to Truffert. Age-wise, he's 23, so I think he's the youngest we're looking at out of these, apart from Lewis Hall, who's 21. Premier League proven. So I think Maatsen is interesting. An interesting profile left-back. Now, we'll come back to Maatsen because we're going to be sort of looking at a few options here, and I want your top three. I'm going to give you my top three at the start, at the end, because I think with this, it's a specialist position and we do need to get it right. So from Maatsen, we go to Dimarco. Now, a lot of people talk about Dimarco. I have a bit of an issue with Dimarco. I mean, he is 28, which means that they won't sign him anyway because he's over 26. Successful defensive actions, he scores quite low. Now, that's probably because he plays for Inter and they're one of the best teams. In fact, he's only successful defensive actions are basically how successful you are in your defensive actions per 90. He's scoring 5.7. Luke Shaw at 7.6 is very low. Dorgu, Maatsen, Truffert, Anthony Robinson, they're nearly at 10. Dimarco's at 5.7. So he's quite low on that for me. And also in the attacking sense, dribbles per 90, 0.6. I think this is another stat I want to bring in, dribbles per 90. Because when I'm looking at my left back, I want them to be putting crosses in. I want them to be aggressive in the tackle. But I also want them to not just be reliant on a very good ball that they can get out their feet and put a cross in. I want them to be able to go past the fullback and whip a cross in. I think that's very important. The ability... David Beckham and Gary Neville worked really well because it was all about timing of your run, overloads, overlap. Gary Neville wasn't very good at taking people on, but it was all about getting that a little bit of space with Beckham to get the cross in. I would like a left back that can actually do that, but also create it out of themselves. So I think the dribbles per 90 is quite interesting. Now, Luke Shaw, dribbles per 90 is horrific. 0.2 dribbles per 90. Dimarco, 0.6. Lewis Hall, 3 dribbles per 90. Dorgu, 4 dribbles per 90. So it's a skill. Maatsen's 2.5. So Maatsen would be third, Lewis Hall would be second, and Dorgu would be third for the ability to take people on and put a cross in. Anthony Robinson, Nathaniel Brown, Truffert, about 1.5. It's quite low. Luke Shaw and Dimarco, horrific. Just not in their arsenal at all. So I look at Dimarco and I go, well, defensively he's not really tested at Inter. Dribbling, non-existent, really. Attacking wise, he actually does put a lot of crosses in. Like he does put a lot of crosses in. He's at 6.1 per 90, which makes him the best out of everybody we're looking at. The only ones who get close to him are Anthony Robinson and Truffert at 5 and 4 respectively. So look, Dimarco is probably everybody's hipster pick. I like Dimarco, but at 28, very low defensive output, not really a dribbler, good cross. Coming into the Premier League, 28. Actually, on this one, I'm sort of like, I think there's better options. I do. I think there's better options. So I wouldn't go for Dimarco for me because I think there are so many people out there. Now, Nathaniel Brown at Frankfurt has been mentioned. I've seen a lot of the Bundesliga this season. I think he's an interesting player. I think age-wise, he's 22. So with Lewis Hall and Maatsen, they'd be younger options. My issue with Nathaniel Brown is defensive actions very decent. 8.2 per 90 puts him in, above Luke Shaw and around everybody else. But the attacking output really isn't there. Passes per 90 is very low, 33 passes per 90, which is lower than Luke Shaw. It's lower than everybody, actually. Very, very low output on the passing. And very, very low output on crosses per 90, 1.6, which is almost near Luke Shaw's 1.3. So, and attacking-wise, dribbling, again, dribbles per 90, 1.8, which is obviously better than Luke Shaw's 0.2. But I just feel with Nathaniel Brown, Frankfurt will want a lot of money. He's definitely a good player, but there's a lot of work to be done there, and he's not played in the Premier League. So for me, Dimarco, work to be done, 28. Nathaniel Brown, work to be done, 22. I think we can almost remove those players and basically say that, look, there's some really good Premier League options. Maatsen, we've spoken about. Lewis Hall, we're going to do next. In my top three, I think it's got to be a case of let's let me just remove Dimarco and Nathaniel Brown there. Let's look at Premier League options. Let's look at Lewis Hall, Maatsen, and the two outliers that I have. And I just want to say as well, Mitchell at Crystal Palace isn't necessarily a bad choice. He scores consistently well on crosses per 90, defensive actions, and I think he's about mid-20s. So Mitchell at Palace never gets mentioned. He's not a bad shout, but I think there are some really, really good options. Lewis Hall is probably going to be everybody's number one. At 21, he's the youngest. I think he's having the best season. I've watched a lot of Newcastle this season, and I like the fact that he's relentless in his stamina. His passing's really good. He can dribble, he can put a cross in, and he's obviously going to get better and better and better. I like Lewis Hall. I think that where he is at the moment, crosses per 90, 2.7, puts him way ahead of Luke Shaw, like everybody else. Puts him around the same level as Maatsen, but under the Truffert and the Robinson. So let's just remind on crosses, this is where we're looking at for the left back. Crosses per 90 is how many crosses you're putting in per game. Luke Shaw's at 1.2. So we're getting 1.2 crosses per 90 out of Luke Shaw. If you've got Maatsen and Lewis Hall, they're going to put in around 3 crosses per 90, which is a huge improvement. If you've got Truffert at Bournemouth, he's going to put 4 in per 90. And if you've got Robinson from Fulham, he's going to put in 5 per 90. This, to me, is probably the most important thing. Second to that, it's a bit niche, but I like the dribbling. I like the dribbling output. I like the fact that not only are you going to put crosses in the box for me, I like the fact that you've got the ability to take people on. The modern fullback. Remember what we were talking about on the morning show about the Hakimi and the Mendes? The modern fullback for me, and United have neglected this for so many years. The modern fullback is the ability to put a cross into the box and the ability to create them situations to put that cross in the box. It's essential. And the ability to be good in possession, because you've got to be, obviously you've got to be able to tackle. You've got to have stamina. You've got to be able to get a tackle in, like I say. However, if you want a fullback that's good at crossing, they also need to be good in possession, because you might have to work that situation. You might receive the ball at left back, play it into your midfielder, have it back, play a 1-2 with your fullback, with your winger, get into space and whip a cross in. So possession and passing's good. And also dribbling, the ability to get hold of the ball. So if we're talking about our options and we're basically saying Anthony Robinson's number 1 in the league for crosses into the box, Truffert's second, and then you've got Hall and Maatsen third. On dribbling per 90, Truffert's 1.6, so he's quite low. Robinson's actually 1.1, so he's even lower. So Truffert and Robertson score high on crosses into the box, but low on dribbling, which means they don't create their chances by dribbling. They create their chances through passing and being in space. But Lewis Hall is 3 dribbles per 90, and Maatsen is 2.5. So Lewis Hall dribbling is very, very high when you consider Dorgu's 4.3, and we know Dorgu can dribble. So Lewis Hall, for me, jumps way ahead in the fact that he can put 3 crosses in per 90, but he can actually dribble as well, which is a very important thing. On his passing, he's also number 1 for that. 45 passes per 90 puts him ahead of everybody apart from Anthony Robinson. And I'm not surprised Anthony Robinson is doing 50 passes per 90, because if Anthony Robinson is number 1 by quite a long way for crosses per 90, but he doesn't dribble, I would expect, how the bloody hell is he creating 5 crosses per 90, but he doesn't dribble? Well, he must be doing it through passing and 1-2s and everything like that. But Lewis Hall is an outlier in relation to dribbling, passing, and crosses per 90. He might not be number 1 in all of them, but he's in the top 3. He's in the top 2. And at 21, you could say that maybe he should be the number 1. Now, defensive action, very important. Successful defensive actions per 90, Lewis Hall is 10. The same as Maatsen. Just ahead of Robinson. Second to Truffert on 11. So, for me, and this is where it takes a little bit of a twist, I've got Lewis Hall in my top 3. Definitely. Whether we can get him from Newcastle or not, I don't know. I think Newcastle, and you've got to look at price here, and that's what we're going to do finally. Lewis Hall, age profile, nationality, homegrown, ability to dribble, high on crosses per 90, high on passes per 90, and high on successful defensive action, so tackling. Sign me up. Sign me up. Absolutely got to be in your top 3. Maatsen, slightly older, slightly below Lewis Hall on dribbling and passes per 90 and crosses per 90, but a very good option as well. Again, how do you get him out of Villa? Going to be expensive. And this is where, for me, you get onto Truffert and Robinson. Because Robinson and Truffert put more crosses in per 90 than Maatsen and Hall. They're also high scorers on successful defensive actions, and they do well on passes per 90. Dribbling, no, they're not that. They're not that. And Lewis Hall is that. They're not going to give you the dribbles. But in a way, they still put a lot of crosses in. So that shows you they're technically good players to create those situations. Anthony Robinson's probably the best left-back in the Premier League. That's a statement, but he probably is. If you know, you know. Last season, it was him and Kirkes. This season, he's done it again, even though he's had a few injuries. And I think that's a problem with Robinson. He's 28. He's 28. He's over 26. United are going to say no. The question I'm asking is, should Anthony Robinson be in there, and should he be in the top 3? Because his attacking output is incredible. His defensive output is good. His passing output is incredible. He's done it at Fulham. Anthony Robinson, really, for me, is the twist. It's whether Anthony Robinson should be in there. You can't deny the fact that he's number 1 for crosses per 90. I mean, he's like, if Luke Shaw is 1 cross per 90 and he's 5, he's 5 times the output. And he doesn't need to dribble to put a cross in. And he's ridiculously strong and powerful and quick, and he's good at passing, and he's good defensively. So the question is, does Anthony Robinson go into your top 3? Because realistically, if he's 23 years of age, he's probably number 1. It's only the fact that he's 28 and he's had a couple of injuries. Do you ignore that and go for somebody a little bit younger? So question 1 is, does Anthony Robinson get in there? Because statistically, he probably should do. Question 2 is, why is Truffert not in there? Because he is 24. So Truffert crosses per 90 higher than Maatsen and Hall. Defensive actions higher than Maatsen and Hall and Robinson. Passing per 90, very steady. Dribbling very low, but again, it shows the ability to get crosses into the box and support his winger. So for me, my top 3 are Truffert, Hall, and Robinson. And Maatsen just drops out because I feel that Maatsen is basically Lewis Hall if you can't get Lewis Hall. Do I need to put Maatsen in the top 3 if I can go for Lewis Hall? Whereas I think Truffert and Robinson, I think Lewis Hall and Maatsen are very similar. They dribble, they tackle, they put crosses in. And if I don't get Lewis Hall, I can just go for Maatsen. If I don't get neither, I don't get either. But I think Robinson offers you experience, and he's number 1 for crosses, and Truffert is almost like the next one down at 24. And price-wise, Maatsen and Hall are going to cost me a lot more than Robertson and Truffert. I think you get Truffert for 40. I think you get Robinson for less. I think Hall and Maatsen are going to cost you 60. But the positive for me is, and what this video exposes, please do smash a like on the video, get your comments in and give me your top 3. My top 3, by the way, Lewis Hall, Truffert, Robinson. But what this exposes is that Luke Shaw, factually, and Ricky can sit down about this, Luke Shaw does not offer, factually, dribbling, crosses into the box, or good output. He just doesn't. He scores high on aerial duels because he's always been good at that, but he just doesn't offer what the modern left-back needs to be. We need a left-back, and if Man United ignore this situation and just stick with Shaw and Dorgu next season, I think it's shocking. Absolutely shocking. We need to spend on a left-back. We have to statistically and with our eyes improve our output. And every option we've spoken about has been very specific about the ability to put crosses into the box on a high level, be defensively sound and good in possession. They're the 3 things. The ability to dribble, I think, is a bonus because they can create their own crosses. But for me, it's about possession, defensive actions and crosses into the box. And Luke Shaw doesn't score on those. He doesn't, and he's not going to. So we need a left back. The question is, which one do you go for? For me, I think Truffert is probably the cheapest and most intelligent signing on age, output, and price. Lewis Hall is probably the best option on potential, output, and age. And Robinson is probably the best one on actual delivering here and now with experience and price as well. Let me know your comments. I love doing these videos. I hope you do too. And look, as I said, Dimarco and Brown for me, I'm not opposed to bringing players in from outside the Premier League, but I just think there's a few variables there that you don't get with this lot. There will be certain positions where we don't have a raft of left-backs in the Premier League that are going to improve us. I mean, I'm talking Truffert, Robinson, Maatsen, Hall, Mitchell. There's 5 there. 5 left-backs that are going to be better than Luke Shaw instantly. All Premier League proven. So we can't miss on this unless we don't throw. And we have to throw. Let me know your thoughts. Thanks for watching. I'll speak to you on the next one.